Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. We've arrived at the climax of our journey into the Lotus Sutra, chapter 16. And yes, I have chanted to understand this chapter. That's the second Siddhanta. And I have chanted to give a good presentation today. That's the first Siddhanta. Yes, it's okay to chant for things. I'm humbled for how does anyone express and define the inexpressible and undefinable? Why is chapter 16 so important? Perhaps we can use the metaphor of orienteering or backpacking, using a map and compass. All the sutras are the maps for how to live. Chapter 16 is our compass. Using a map alone will get lost and walk in circles. And having only a compass with no map, we wander aimlessly with no destination. Chapter 16 is our compass needle pointing north, so we can freely navigate safely and directly through all of life's trials and tribulations. So sit back, relax, open your mind and heart, and enjoy our journey through chapter 16. Jackie Stone and Don Lopez wrote in Two Buddhas Seated Side by Side, in a sutra filled with fireworks, chapter 16 is the bombshell, intimated by the Buddha saying, not once but 3 times, you should believe the true words of the Tathagata. Hidden in the depths of the lifespan chapter of the origin teaching of the Lotus Sutra, quote from the Kaimoku Sho. And Niwano in Buddhism for Today said, secret or esoteric does not mean something hidden, but something so profound that is difficult to fathom. So, beginning with setting the scene, the teaching of the Lotus Sutra has such a perfect organization. Here is the reason that we cannot grasp the true meaning of the sutra by reading only bits and pieces, skipping here and there. Niwano, Buddhism for Today. There are common themes woven throughout the chapters and verses, like holding a cut gem in one's hands and rotating it to let the light shine through the multiple facets. Nichiren Daishonin based his teaching concerning the eternal Buddha Shakyamuni on the original gate as the means of saving ordinary people in the latter age of the generation. This original Buddha, eternal Shakyamuni Buddha, is presented for the first time in chapter 16. The Buddha is addressing Maitreya at the head of the assembly, and like chapters 11 through 17, where we are going to be up in the air, they're mind-busting verses in prose, and the use of metaphors is intended to shock us out of our preconceptions and assumptions, forcing us to see beyond, deeper, below, what they perceive with our 6 senses. The use of near infinite amounts of distances and time forces us to realize that we can't conceive of or understand this Dharma with our plain intellect. Infinite space and distances mean we are all interconnected, that there are no distance between us. We are one. We are united. We are interbeing. Infinite space and time also indicates the depth of dimensions of our lives that we are all alienated from. All that resides within our unconscious minds and even influences of all time and space on our body and mind at this particular point of space-time that we are not consciously aware of or even able to process, but it is there, right now. And we can awaken to its presence and its influence through, though perhaps not ever to grasp it with a finite mind of selfhood, for there is no self. Every chapter has been a setup for chapter 16. And as we just said, the previous chapters blew up our idea of time and space. The Lotus Sutra construction is there are 3 assemblies at 2 locations. These are the places where Shakyamuni Buddha taught the Lotus Sutra. The assembly takes place at the first location, called the former assembly on Mount Sacred Eagle, which takes place from the beginning of the sutra until the middle of chapter 11. The assembly at the second location is called the assembly in space, which takes place from the middle of chapter 11 until the end of chapter 22. And the third assembly returns to the first location and is called the latter assembly on Mount Sacred Eagle. It takes place from chapter 23 to chapter 28. Each of these assemblies is led by a different bodhisattva. Manjushri, who is known for his wisdom, led the first assembly, which is called the trace gate, or the law of appearance. Wisdom can also mean gnosis, or knowledge. Maitreya is leading this assembly in the sky, or space. He's known for compassion. This is the law of origin, the original gate. And universal virtue leads the last section back again in normal time and space, which is the practice of precepts. This correlates loosely with the threefold training: wisdom, concentration, and morality. Wisdom can mean knowledge or gnosis. Compassion can also mean intuition and feeling. And virtue can mean action. The threefold training is a way of grouping the eightfold path into these three parts. The first one, morality, consisting of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Concentration, consisting of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And wisdom, consisting of right view and right intention. The major themes of the Lotus Sutra: first and foremost, the entire Lotus Sutra is a treatise or manifesto or an explanation of the threefold truth. This is really important to remember. The entire Lotus Sutra is nothing more than an explanation of the threefold truth. Chapter 16, what we're doing today, presents the truth of emptiness, or shunyata, just as does the Heart Sutra, which is so famous. But now, it presents it through a positive point of view, where emptiness is not absence or void, but it's inclusive of everything, manifesting temporary reality, not absence, abundance. Chapter 2 was presenting the truth of provisionality. In the Queen Shramala Sutra and other Buddha nature sutras, it is asserted that while the Dharmakaya is empty of limiting or conditioned qualities, it is not empty of Buddha qualities. Of course, this could lead to substantializing the Buddha nature Dharmakaya, or the exclusive middle way, wherein a middle way, Buddha nature, is posited above and beyond the truth of emptiness and the truth of provisionality. So this gets tricky. However, in general, we remember that the threefold truth that Tiantai taught was the insight that the empty and the provisional are included in the middle way as one unit. And again, with provisionality, it's this idea of interconnection. We are all interconnected. And the whole of the Lotus Sutra is presenting the truth of the middle way, which is hope and trust and confidence. Conventional understanding holds that the cause of Buddhahood and its effect, that is, practice and attainment, are separated in time. To become a Buddha, one must carry out the practices of the Bodhisattva for immeasurable aeons, a staggering length of time spanning countless lifetimes. The Trace Gate, or the Shakyamuni portion of the Lotus Sutra, even while extending the promise of Buddhahood to all beings, still preserves this perspective on realizing Buddhahood as a linear process in which one moves from practice, the 9 realms, toward attainment, Buddhahood. We see this in Shakyamuni's Buddha's predictions in the sutra's early chapters, that his individual voice-hearer disciples such as Shariputra and Mahakashyapa and others will become Buddhas in the remote future, after many aeons of Buddhist practice. From this perspective, Buddhahood remains a distant goal, abstracted from one's present existence. That's from Two Buddhas Side by Side, Jackie Stone. And she continues, but with the origin teaching, Nichiren wrote, the cause and effect of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings and of the Trace Gate teaching are demolished, and original cause and original effect are revealed. The 9 realms are inherent in the beginningless Buddha realm, and the Buddha realm inheres in the beginningless 9 realms. This represents the true mutual inclusion of the 10 realms, the 3,000 realms in a single moment of existence. That is, he saw the origin teaching as overturning linear views of practice and attainment, in which one first makes efforts and then realizes Buddhahood as a later result, and revealing that cause, the 9 realms, and effect, the Buddha realm, are present simultaneously. Buddhahood is manifested in the very act of practice. One thing I have realized lately is that the oneness of cause and effect also has a Madhyamaka rationale and a Yogacara rationale. The Yogacara rationale is that every phenomena, dharma, is simultaneously the fruition or effect of a seed in the storehouse consciousness, and also is a cause perfuming the seeds in a storehouse and or sowing new seeds. Every experience and act then is a fruition in sowing at once. For Madhyamaka, cause and effect are both designations for phenomena that are empty of any such qualities as simply being a cause or an effect. For instance, to freeze frame reality, the bark or pith of roots or limbs or leaves of a tree are all causes and conditions which allow a tree to exist. However, is there any tree or effect apart from them? Even taking the flowing of time at one point during the development from seed to tree, is there a distinct moment where the cause becomes the effect? Isn't each moment complete in itself as both a cause for some future development and as the effect of a previous development? Madhyamaka goes to great lengths to point out that our approach to causality grossly oversimplifies by simply assuming that there are some things that are causes and other things that are effects, when the insight of interbeing is much more subtle and complex. In the same way, the 10 realms can't be simply categorized as 10 separate, distinct things which operate upon or produce one another in a linear fashion as substantialized causes and effects. And that was written by Reverend McCormick. Continuing from two Buddhas side by side. In terms of realizing Buddhahood with this very body, Nichiren wrote, "The trace teaching is the gate that affords entry, while the origin teaching holds its true meaning, that is, its actualization." That's from the Myoichi Nyo Gohenji. Where the trace teaching presents Buddhahood as a potential inherent in the 9 realms of unenlightened beings, the origin teaching shows the Buddha's realm revealed through the Buddha's conduct in the 9 realms, represented in particular by the Bodhisattva realm. The Buddha realm has no separate existence or mode of expression apart from the 9 realms. Rather, the 9 realms, without losing their individual character, are purified, elevated, and positively redirected in the light of the realized Buddha realm. This is awakened reality of the Buddha, which Nichiren termed, quote, "the single thought moment comprising 3,000 realms in actuality," end quote. For him, this revelation had one sole scriptural point of focus. It was, quote, "hidden in the depths," end quote, of the lifespan chapter, the origin teaching of the Lotus Sutra. And that was from the Kaimoku Sho. In other words, the trace gate focuses on how the realm of Buddhahood is within the other 9 realms and will eventually shine forth, while the origin gate focuses on how the realm of Buddhahood has been at work all along in and through the activities of the 9 realms. Shakyamuni declares that even in the fire that destroys the world at the end of the cosmic cycle, his land, the present world, is tranquil and never decays. It is a place where sentient beings are joyful. This is the realm depicted on Nichiren's mandala. Alluding to this sutra passage, Nichiren writes, quote, "Now the Saha world of original time is the constantly abiding pure land, liberated from the 3 disasters and beyond the cycle of the 4 kalpas. Its Buddha has not already entered nirvana in the past, nor is he yet to be born in the future, and his disciples are of the same essence. This reality is the 3,000 realms of one's own mind." The Kanjin Honzon Sho. The 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. This moment where you hear my dog barking is infinite and boundless and includes all moments. This is the core and the crux of chapter 16. Chapter 16, it is the heart, just like the heart that brings nourishment to all of our body and oxygen to all parts of our body. Nichiren understood the revelation of the Buddha's inconceivable lifespan as the very heart of the Lotus Sutra. The sutra, I want to repeat what we talked about at the very beginning of our study session 18 months ago. The Lotus Sutra does not invalidate or replace other sutras, nor does chapter 16. what it does is recontextualizes them by illuminating them in the positive light of the threefold truth. As we said earlier, chapter 16 becomes our compass that we navigate through life in all of the Buddhist sutras. Chapter 16, it's the mother of all in this world. As the sutra says, like a mother to all in this world. Chapter 3 of the Lotus Sutra, I know that I am truly a child of Buddha, born from the words of Buddha, and come to life through her Dharma. And chapter 23 said, this sutra is apparent to all wise sages, to those trained and in training, and to those who aspire to bodhisattvahood. The mother image gives life to all, a powerful archetype. I think this is a reason that Kishimojin, of all the Buddha Shoten Zenjin, is so much loved, because she represents the goddess image for protecting the family. She represents the fierce energy of the mother to take care of and protect us all. When suffering comes up, we should be present for it. We shouldn't run away from it or cover it up with consumption, distraction, or diversion. We should simply recognize and embrace it like a mother lovingly embracing a crying baby in her arms. That's from Thich Nhat Hanh. Again, it's very powerful, this mother image. If you're suffering, don't fight it, don't push it away, don't resist it. Hold it like a crying child and love it. Love yourself. Now I can hear some of you already thinking, but Mark, you're changing the words of the sacred text. How can you possibly do that? This is an important shift away from the stern, masculine, patriarchal image of the stern father to a loving, kind, compassionate mother. Japanese, in particular, are so enamored with lords and sovereigns and rulers and authority. I think this is a major reason why so many Nichiren folks get into orthodoxy, righteousness, and fundamentalism and miss the point entirely. And all the Mahayana sutras were revising the prior sutras for clarity and completeness. So I'm comfortable saying if the Buddha is a parent, the Buddha can just as easily be a mother as he or she could be as a father. And I find the mother a very powerful image, just like Kishimojin. Now Nichiren wrote in the Ongi Kuden, or actually said in the Ongi Kuden, and Nico wrote it, quote, as for the passages to the fact that the sutra itself possesses the three virtues, the virtue of sovereign is attested in the words, as the Buddha is the king or queen of doctrines, so likewise this sutra is the queen of the sutras. That was from chapter 23. The virtue of teacher is attested in the words, quote, this sutra can save all living beings, end quote, also from chapter 23. And the virtue of the parent is attested in the words, and as a heavenly king, great Brahma, is the father of all living beings, so this sutra likewise is the parent for all sages, worthies, etc. Same, chapter 23. Now Nichiren and his followers are the fathers and mothers of all living beings, for we save them from the torments of the hell of incessant sufferings. He also said, Niwano says in Buddhism for Today, now in this chapter on the eternal life of the Buddha, the truth is clearly revealed. Here it is stated beyond doubt that the ultimate substance of the Buddha is the everlasting life force of the universe, none other than the eternal Buddha. It is further stated that humankind and all other things are but part of the Buddha, children of the Buddha, so to speak. In this way, the cold perception of the void of emptiness becomes charged with human warmth, as people are stirred to gratitude upon realizing deep inside that they live wrapped in the compassion of the eternal Buddha. At this stage comes true happiness and a sense of worth of being alive. What more powerful figure than the mother does that represent? Manifestation bodies. This quote comes from Thich Nhat Hanh.
I found the property tax stuff.
Oh. Please stay on mute, if you would. Thank you. Quote, again, this is from Thich Nhat Hanh, from Peaceful Action, Open Heart, Lessons from the Lotus Sutra, which we use as one of our study guides for these talks. Quote, in fact, the Buddha is not born and does not die. That is the true nature of the Buddha and of everything else. When we look deeply enough into any phenomenon, a pebble, a drop of dew, a leaf, a cloud, we recognize its ultimate nature in the three Dharma seals of impermanence, no self, and interdependence. In this way, we can discover its true nature of no birth, no death, which is exactly the same as the true nature of the Tathagata. A beautiful golden leaf in autumn is also just putting on a magical show for us. First, the leaf plays at being born in the springtime, and later it pretends to fall down to earth and die. As far as the phenomenal world is concerned, we believe that the leaf comes into being and then passes away. But in terms of the ultimate dimension, birth and death, coming and going, existence and non-existence are only a magic display, a mere appearance. And he also recently said on death, our greatest fear is that when we die, we will become nothing. Many of us believe that our entire existence is only a lifespan beginning the moment we are born or conceived and ending the moment we die. We believe that we are born from nothing, and when we die we become nothing, and so we are filled with fear of annihilation. The Buddha has a very different understanding of our existence. It is the understanding that birth and death are notions. They are not real. The fact that we think they are true makes a powerful illusion that causes our suffering. The Buddha taught that there is no birth, there is no death, there is no coming, there is no going, there is no same, there is no different, there is no permanent self, there is no annihilation. We only think there is. When we understand we cannot be destroyed, we are liberated from fear. It is a great relief. We can enjoy life and appreciate it all in a new way. As the Buddha said in chapter 16, "For I always abide here, teaching the Dharma." We all have the seeds of Buddha nature within us. We all have the three Buddha bodies. We are all bodhisattvas in the process of becoming Buddhas. Nichiren wrote in the Ongi Kuden, I of the sutra scripture itself represents the living being of the Dharma realm. I here refers to each and every being in the 10 worlds. The thus come one is the living beings in the threefold world. Thus come one refers to all living beings. You should understand that the ultimate meaning of this chapter is that ordinary mortals, just as they are in their original states of being, are Buddhas. And he continued on, as for the transcendental powers of the Buddha, the actions that are carried out instant by instant, motion by motion, by us living beings are regarded as transcendental powers. The countless things in the 3,000 realms that undergo the process of birth, abiding, changing, and extinction are all themselves embodiments of the transcendental powers. Yui Butsu Yo Butsu. From the introduction to the Threefold Lotus Sutra, Brooke Zipperin wrote, no one person can ever encompass the ultimate reality of things. No single mind can ever be omniscient. Buddha is in the interaction between things, Yui Butsu Yo Butsu, the interconnection of all things. Buddha is in the interactive process of things, the now moment, the act of creation when two things come together and a new thing is arisen. The past within the present within the future. Awakening to Buddhahood is seeing and engaging in an intentional act of creation, and each moment as it flows to the next. The interbeing of all things, that all things are contained in the moment, intersubjectivity. And Thich Nhat Hanh wrote in Peaceful Action, everything we see around us in the world of appearances, we too are participating in the infinite lifespan of the Buddha. So, as you probably were wondering, when are we going to recite something from the Lotus Sutra? Because we've done that every session. But I wanted to do something different today. We're going to recite the entire Jigage in English. So get your sutra books out. We're going to do it in English together. And I want to say a few words to set the context before we begin our opening recitation, or our middle recitation. Today we are going to do more than a simple recitation of a selected passage from the chapter. we're going to recite the entire verse section, Jigage, while simultaneously using our imagination in a creative visualization meditation. Whenever you hear the words I, his, thus come one, or Buddha, please imagine yourself in the first person as you recite them. And just to repeat what Nichiren wrote, I represents the living being of the Dharma realm. I here refers to each and every being of the 10 worlds. The thus come one is the living beings of the threefold world. So just in case you were thinking Mark is getting crazy again, I feel like I'm grounded that Nichiren himself thought this might be an interesting meditation. But as a caveat, and Reverend McCormick particularly wanted me to mention this, we're not encouraging people into thinking thoughts of self-grandeur when visualizing oneself as the Buddha, as you recite these verses in the first person. That said, not thinking of oneself as a Buddha is perhaps equally unwholesome and self-sabotaging. So when engaging in this visualization, chanting, meditation, and while thinking in the first person, try and do so in a manner that also recognizes that all phenomena are interconnected, and the I is actually the whole part, and the I is actually the whole of which you are a part. And when we truly get that
I did check the mail yesterday.
Okay.
No mail?
Guys, got to stay on mute. When I put you on mute, please stay on mute. And when we truly get that we are all interconnected and part of the ever-present, infinitely arising process of creation, the eternal Buddha, how can we ever seek to harm ourselves or others? So, in your mind's eye, let's begin together reciting chapter 16, first section in English. Myoho Renge Kyo, the lifespan of the eternal Tathagata. Chapter 16, since I became Buddha, countless hundreds of thousands of millions of immeasurable numbers of kalpas have passed in the innumerable kalpas since then. I have ceaselessly expounded the Dharma, teaching and transforming countless millions of beings and enabling them to embark upon the Buddha way. I employed skillful means to reveal my nirvana in order to liberate all living beings. In truth, though I am not extinguished, for I always abide here teaching the Dharma, although I am always dwelling in this world by using my transcendent powers, I cause living beings with distorted minds to be unable to see me. All who perceive that I have perished everywhere pay homage to my relics. All who cherish and long for me look up with thirsting hearts. At last, when living beings humbly believe, are upright in character and gentle and flexible in mind, and wish with all their hearts to see the Buddha even at the cost of their lives, appear together on divine Eagle Peak. At that time I tell all living beings that I always hear and did not pass away. I use the power of of skillful means to manifest both that I am extinguished and that I am not. If in other lands there are living beings, joyful, reverent, and faithful, I will teach the supreme Dharma among them as well. You not hearing of this merely think I have perished. I see all living beings sinking in the sea of suffering, and I do not appear before them so that they begin to thirst for me, are filled with the deepest longing. I then come forth to teach the Dharma. Such are my transcendent powers throughout immeasurable kalpa. I am always on divine eagle peak and abiding in all other places. Living beings see great fires burning at the time of the end of a kalpa. This land of mine is tranquil and calm, always filled with heavenly beings and humans. Groves, halls, and pavilions are adorned with every kind of gem, and its jeweled trees are full of blossoms and fruit. All living beings take their pleasure, while heavenly beings strike heavenly drums, making many kinds of music and showering mandarava flowers on the Buddha and his great assembly. Pure land is never destroyed, yet all see it as consumed by fire and filled with every kind grief, horror, pain, and distress. Those errant living beings, because of their bad karma, the names of the three treasures throughout immeasurable kalpas, but those who perform virtuous deeds, gentle and upright of nature, will all see me here teaching the Dharma at times for the sake of them all. I teach that a Buddha's lifespan is beyond measure to those who see only after a very long time. I teach that a Buddha is rarely met. Such is the power of my wisdom that its light shines infinitely. My lifespan is of countless kalpas attained through long cultivation of practice. You who have wisdom give rise to no doubt about this. Bring doubt forever to an end, for the Buddha's words are valid, not in vain. Physician with skillful means, who is actually alive and announces his death only in order to cure his deranged children, cannot be accused of falsehood. To all in this world I cure their sufferings and diseases for the sake of ordinary people with distorted thinking. Say that I am extinguished, though truly I am here. Were they always to see me, would grow complacent and self-indulgent, lose themselves in attachment to the five desires, into evil paths. I always know living beings, those who practice the way and those who do not. For their sake expound various teachings to liberate each of them accordingly. I am ever thinking, how can I cause living beings to embark upon the unsurpassable way and quickly accomplish embodiment as Buddhas. Okay, so we must deal with the elephant in the room, the problematic implications of using the word eternal when translating. Eternal, primordial, original, always present, absolute, void. Niwano makes the same mistake so many do and turns the idea of the lifespan of the Tathagata into something like the Force in Star Wars, of an eternal Buddha approaching the idea of a permanent presence or God. As Niwano said, the eternal Buddha is the ultimate substance of the Buddha, is the everlasting life force of the universe. Well, how does that reconcile with the three truths? Because there is no substance. So it's easy to see that we can get derailed with this idea of beginningless and timeless. And we can read that even Nichiren Shu is not immune from making such mistakes. This comes from the history and teachings of Nichiren Buddhism on page 231, a recently translated study guide for Nichiren Shu shamis like myself that we have to learn. It says, quote, "To rely on the Dharma and not upon persons means to rely on the eternal Buddha and his teachings and not upon bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Maitreya, or the founders of other schools." That's like, wow, that's really not what the Four Reliances is all about. But you can see it's so easy to personalize, this idea. So this being attached and clinging to this idea that there is a self leads people to conclude that there is either a permanent, unchanging, and independent self, externalism, or that there is no meaningful existence or continuity of the self, nihilism. The Buddha basically said, neither of these things are correct. Ultimate reality. While Buddhism does carefully avoid answering the question, is there a God? It does embrace that there is something larger than me, something boundless, wondrous, mystical, unknowable, that words can never describe. When we open ourselves to it, we can feel it, and it feels magnificent. This is encoded in our mantra of Myoho. Tiantai wrote that our mental posture while meditating should be humble and repentant. Humble in understanding that we are part of something larger, bigger, greater than ourselves, and repentant that we take responsibility and are accountable for our thoughts, words, and actions. Nichiren Buddhism stands perfectly balanced at this intersection of other power and self-power. And Nichiren Buddhism, we are a devotional style of Buddhism. We worship, we take refuge, we find sanctuary in this wonderful Dharma of the ultimate reality of life, the eternal Buddha. We chant, we sing, we drum, we ring bells. We like doing it in a group. We're not just sitting. We're celebrating that life itself, just as it is, in all its glory and imperfections, is a miracle. Every breath a new beginning, each breath following the other in a continuous cycle of renewal and flow. The Lotus Sutra, chapter 16, presents this truth of emptiness not from a perspective of absence or void, but from a perspective of abundance. A positive view that life is magnificent, glorious, constantly unfolding in new ways, a miracle of wonder and creation. This is why the Zen monk Hakuin broke down in tears when he finally understood the message of the Lotus Sutra. The eternal Buddha is a process. We are an active participant in this single thought moment of ceaseless creation, Yuibutsu Yobutsu. Ultimate reality, Shohojiso, is the eternal Buddha. The eternal Buddha refers to functions, a process, not to a person, people, places, or things. Quoting from Robert Silverberg, a famous science fiction author who wrote in his book Nightwings, quote, "This was not the merging of communion in which a person sinks anonymously into the divine, but rather a union of self and self, maintaining independence within a larger dependence. And I personally find great synergies between all the world's wisdom in mystical traditions, which in general ground their religious systems and models on contemplation, whether they call it prayer or meditation. So to greatly oversimplify, because that's what's required in today's modern era of social media, 144 character sound bites, the eternal Buddha, the Dharmakaya, is as close as Buddhism comes to God. However, that said, there is no direct correlation. The Dharmakaya is not the creator. However, it is what often called creation. The Dharma body is the body of reality, the true reality of all things that seem created and that they seem to have a birth and death. But this true reality is unborn and deathless, as per the prose section of chapter 16. This is tricky. The Dharma body is not the pantheistic God, nor is it pantheism. It can perhaps be said the Dharma body equals all things in their authenticity, pure, blissful, and constant know-nothingness. Nichiren frequently uses a favorite Buddhist metaphor of the moon to describe this three bodies of the Buddha. The Dharmakaya is the moon, the Sambhogaya is the light of the moon and the photons, waves, and particles, and the Nirmanakaya is the moon's reflection on the water. No moon, no reflection. No water, no reflection. No light, no reflection, and so on. Of course, all metaphors break down, and this one breaks down spectacularly. A cloud can prevent the light from reaching the water, or the water can dry up, or the moon can never be dark, but in all cases, the moon is still there. The analogy posits the Dharmakaya as something more lasting and essential than its light, or its reflection on the water. So we can see that the Dharmakaya, Buddha nature, eternal Buddha, is very similar to some interpretations of God, as Brother David Stendhal Rast wrote, quote, "Thus, belief in creation and belief in dependent origination, creation, are two different expressions of one and the same underlying faith, two different pointers toward the same experience. Staying true to my Christian tradition's belief in divine creation and show that it was compatible with Buddhist belief in interdependence arising, it all hinged on bridging the gap between creator and creation." Thomas Merton wrote, "God isn't someone else. For the mystic, there is no gap between creator and creation. The whole universe is an expression of divine life. The cosmic web of mutually interdependent cause and effect in which all things arise is what the mystic poet Kabir sees as the, quote, the secret one slowly growing a body." Thus, belief in creation and belief in interdependence arising are two different expressions of one and the same underlying faith, two different pointers toward the same experience. Faith as experience lies deeper than words and concepts. It is an inner gesture by which we entrust ourselves totally and unconditionally to life, life perceived as our own, yet as a power greater than ourselves. Life makes us human, and each culture, each period of history, gives this faith new expressions and beliefs that are determined by historic and cultural circumstances. Deep inner peace, a sense of belonging, and a firm anchorage in the eternal now of the present moment. End quote. Now this is a quote from Reverend McCormick. "The eternal Buddha is the source. The Dharmakaya is barely different from Meister Eckhart's Godhead, or the Kabbalistic Ein, or Shankara's Brahman. Such monistic or practically monistic conceptions are different than the more process-oriented thought of Buddhism. There are personalistic aspects to Buddhist devotional practice and the way reality functions. Buddhism, including Nichiren Buddhism, however, shrinks from directing people to a personal being among beings as the ultimate reality, as this is speculative metaphysics, which gives rise to clinging. On the other hand, at least in Mahayana and Nichiren Buddhism, the ultimate reality is a source of great compassion and perfect wisdom, the source of all skillful means, what allows there to be anything at all in conjunction with the deluded activity of all beings and characterized by purity, bliss, eternity, and authenticity." And this is, for Sensei, his Easter egg for this whole presentation, using the tarot, the Fool, Not a fool as in dumb. The fool is a symbol of innocence. His journey, his or her journey to come will shape their character. To see the fool generally means a beginning of a new journey, one where you will find filled with optimism and freedom from the usual constraints in life. And this bears repeating. While Buddhism does carefully avoid answering the question, is there a God? It does embrace there is something larger than me, something boundless, wondrous, mystical, unknowable, that words can never describe. When we open ourselves to it, we can feel it, and it feels magnificent. This is myoho. Sometimes when you have a chance, try chanting very, very, very slowly, one breath per syllable. Let yourself float on the sound and resonance. Each syllable is a lotus flower, a gift, and a hug from the Eternal Mother. Now, there's some earlier discourses on timelessness, so this, Lotus Sutra, again, isn't invalidating anything else and is taking its cues from what happened before. And the Dhammapada, verse 348, talked about let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present, gone beyond becoming, with the mind released in every way, you do not again undergo birth and death. And from the Auspicious Night Sutra 131, let not a person revive the past, or on the future build her hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not been reached. Instead, within sight, let them see each presently arisen state. Let them know that and be sure of it. Invincibly, unshakably, today the effort must be made. Tomorrow death may come, who knows? No bargain with mortality can keep him and his hordes away. But one who dwells thus, ardently, relentlessly, by day, by night, it is she, the peaceful sage has said, who has had a single, excellent night. This means disrupting our relationship to time, completely unending how we relate to time and space. It is possible in moments to be nowhere else but here, with conditions exactly as they are. Without plans for changing those conditions, such a state is most likely to arise during our meditations, but can appear at other times as well. Sometimes we intuitively know that the past and the future don't really exist, and that the present is infinite, infinitely deep and spacious, bursting with potential for awakening, and at the same time, ownerless. We come, of course, to the last parable of the Lotus Sutra, the parable of the physician. I'm going to take a moment just to pause. We're at the top of the hour. We're actually getting close to the end. You want to keep going, or you want me to take a break and say part 2?
I think we should just keep going, because if anyone has to leave early, they can watch a recording later.
Okay. All right. Very good. Dharma is medicine. You have to take it, though, for you to cure you. And like any medicine, too much is as bad as not enough. Now, this parable does have a darker side that has troubled me ever since I first heard about it. And honestly, it's my least favorite of the 7 parables. Is the Buddha condoning lying? Does the end justify the means? And is an absentee father a really good role model? Do you have to be absent yourself to get people to want you? Frankly, this is like, man, dude, this just doesn't work for me. But I got to get past it because there's some wisdom in it. The physician, and this is from Peaceful Action, Open Heart, the physician gives us the spiritual medicine we need for healing and transformation of our bodies and minds, the practice of mindfulness. Now it is up to us to take the medicine and practice diligently so that we too can get in touch with the ultimate dimension and recognize our true nature of no birth and no death. Speaking from the point of view of the ultimate dimension, do you need to become a Buddha? Do you need to run after enlightenment? The wave does not have to seek to become water. She is water, right here and now. In the same way, you are already nirvana. You are already a Buddha. You are already what you want to become. What is essential is to enter the path of practice in order to realize this truth and help others realize it too. So our Gohonzon. I am always here preaching the Dharma. This is from the Ongi Kuden. Always here refers to the Saha world. Preaching the Dharma is the sound of the words of all living beings. This Saha world right now where we're together, and the words of our chanting, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, preaching the Dharma. Then I and the assembly of monks appear together on Holy Eagle Peak. And Nichiren wrote that the Gohonzon is the realization and manifestation of this passage and represents entirety of the 10 worlds. The word together means a single moment of life. The word appear is 3,000 realms. The word together also means 10 worlds, and Holy Eagle Peak refers to the Gohonzon. Just like we seek proper physical posture when meditating, we seek proper mental posture when we meditate. This line from chapter 16, there's 2 references to it, are gentle and flexible in mind and gentle and upright in nature. Now these verses are not describing a state of passivity nor morality. This is not the Buddhist equivalent of the meek shall inherit the earth. They are describing a powerful state of mindfulness or mental pliancy, which is sustained, focused attention, shamatha, together with the powerful insight and contemplation, vipassana. Meditation trains our mind to be calm and open, enabling us to see the eternal Buddha in all things and ourselves. Meditation is medicine. Being flexible, agile, and equanimous, like an athlete's body is strong, flexible, and resilient. These are states we achieve through our meditation practice of chanting, Odaimoku, and Shodaigyo. This is the actual proof. The Mind Illuminated, a complete meditation guide, written by John Yates, states, this state is called mental pliancy and occurs because of the complete pacification of the discriminating mind, meaning mental chatter and discursive analysis have stopped. Different parts of the mind are no longer so resistant or preoccupied with other things, and diverse mental processes begin to coalesce around a single purpose. This unification of mind means that, rather than struggling against itself, the mind functions more as a coherent, harmonious whole. And Thich Nhat Hanh again says from Peaceful Action, quote, the ultimate dimension reveals itself either vaguely or clearly to us depending on the quality of our mindfulness. Sometimes we have mindfulness only for a moment. Sometimes we can maintain it for 2 or 3 minutes. If we look at a cloud mindfully and are able to maintain our mindfulness for 3 minutes, for those 3 minutes we have concentration samadhi. When our practice of mindfulness is solid and steady enough, then we are able to keep the lamp of samadhi alight from moment to moment, whether we are in the kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, or office, when we sweep the courtyard or drive our car. In all these actions we maintain the bright flame of samadhi. Practicing this way, we get in touch with our own true nature, which is exactly the same as the Buddha's, unborn, undying. Just like the yellow leaf and everything else we see around us in the world of appearance, we too are participating in the infinite lifespan of the Buddha. The whole. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, a famous phrase from Aristotle 2,300 years ago. The phrase is also used to explain the importance of synergy. Nichiren spoke about this. No single chapter, verse, or character is more important than another. We endeavor to hold, view, and contemplate and understand the whole. It's to the Kaimokusho. Altogether, each of the 69,384 characters of the Lotus Sutra in 28 chapters and 8 fascicles represents the Buddha. This is the sage Nichimyo, Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. Likewise, each character of the Lotus Sutra is like a single wish-granting jewel. This is reply to Priest Soya. Buddhas recognize each character as a golden Shakyamuni, the entrustment in other chapters. Each of the 69,384 characters of the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra is like a crown prince and is the seed of Buddhahood. Whoops, I'm sorry. In some schools, called Ichiha, argue that all chapters of the sutra should be equally valued, and others called Shoretsu claim that only the latter half was superior. And what I want to make the point here is that the Lotus Sutra needs to be taken as a whole, both the teaching of the Buddha and the embodiment of the Buddha wisdom. If one puts sincere faith in each character and brushstroke in it, then one will become a Buddha in one's present form. For example, a piece of white paper becomes black when dipped in black ink, and black lacquer turns white when white liquid is poured into it. Just as poison turns into medicine, so ordinary individuals change into Buddhas. Accordingly, we call it the wonderful law. And that is the teaching that accords with the Buddha's mind, Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, page 132. So, as we wrap this up, the ultimate reality is the eternal Buddha. This is Shoho Jiso. Ultimate reality is not a person, but it is personal. Creator, creation, creating the eternal Buddha refers to a process, not to people, places, or things. And ultimate reality is this single moment unfolding in this continual process flow of creation. This Saha world is the pure land. No mud, no lotus. And yet we all have free will. This is our birthright. This is our power and agency to choose what happens to us. You are not alone. We are all interconnected, all interbeing. So take your medicine. If you are suffering, bring it to your place of practice. Bring it to the Gohonzon and chant about it. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, where there is no suffering, there can be no happiness either, and vice versa. Happiness is possible right now, today. Some say that suffering is only an illusion, or that we live wisely, we have to transcend both suffering and joy. I say the opposite. The way to be happy is to stay in touch with what is actually going on. In doing so, you will gain liberating insights into the true nature of suffering and joy. When you are mindful, you are fully alive. You are fully present. You can get in touch with the wonders of life that can nourish you and heal you. And you are stronger. You are more solid in order to handle the suffering inside you and around you. When you are mindful, you can recognize, embrace, and handle the pain, the sorrow in you and around you to bring relief. And if you continue with concentration and insight, you will be able to transform the suffering inside and help transform the suffering around you. It is in my heart when I use it, because when you breathe in, your mind comes back to your body, and then you become fully aware that you are alive, that you are a miracle, and everything you touch could be a miracle. The orange in your hand, the blue sky, the face of a child, everything becomes a wonder. And in that, they are wonders of life that are available in the here and now. And you need to breathe mindfully in and out in order to be fully present and to get in touch with all these things. And that is a miracle, because you understand the nature of suffering. You know that role of suffering, that suffering plays in life, and you are not trying to run away from suffering anymore. You know how to make use of it in order to build peace and happiness. So take your medicine. The Buddha's example to us all was not that he is a god, but that this medicine works. Take it, and do not worry that it will not cure you. Love yourself as if you are a mother to yourself. If you are suffering, hold it like a crying baby and tenderly embrace it. Be steadfast, diligent, and single-minded. Chant as if you are trying to start a fire with pieces of wet wood. Quote, single-mindedly and wholeheartedly chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo with humility and repentance, trusting in Myoho Renge Kyo as if your life depends on it. I am praying that, no matter how troubled the times may become, the Lotus Sutra will protect you. You should chant as earnestly as though to produce fire from damp wood or to obtain water from the parched ground. End quote. That was Nichiren. So, never give up. Life is a precious gift, yet sometimes it seems too much, and that the appearance of the burning house is overwhelming. Give yourself space and compassion to understand these feelings of despair, suffering, are normal, and everyone has them. If you feel hopeless, tired, weary, seek help, knowing you are not alone. Our Sangha is here for each other, your friends, your family, therapy perhaps, the Gohonzon. Be your own mother. Love yourself. Hold yourself and your suffering with tender compassion and care. And chant for relief. Chant for what you need. Chant for peace. Everything that we have just spoken about as a whole is contained within the meditation container of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Just like we did in that exercise of visualization of I and thus come one, you imagine that you were the Buddha and that you are all interconnected and part of a whole. That's the mental posture when you're chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. So as I thank you for today, I ask, does this presentation make you want to chant more or less? I deeply hope it brings you joy and hope and confidence and trust to chant more. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you until next time.